Good morning. Hi. So on behalf of the organizers of that It Starts With Meek campaign, it's my pleasure to welcome all of you to this morning's panel entitled From James Meredith to Millennials, student panel on race relations. Thank you to all of the panelists for being here this morning, and thank you to the audience also for attending and participating. So let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Shawnboda Mead, and I serve as the Director of the Center for Inclusion and Cross-Cultural Engagement here at the University of Mississippi. And I've been here since the center first opened in the fall semester of 2014. So we're about 3 years old here on campus. And I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves, and there's more information about each of them in your program as well.
My name is Bianca Abney, and I'm a senior.
I'm Tysianna Marino. I'm also a senior.
Hey, my name is Nekkita Beans, and I'm a junior.
Good morning. My name is Brittany Brown, and I'm a sophomore.
Okay, you might notice that it's all women here. I think all of us identify as women, and we did invite some men to be on the panel, but they just weren't able to participate today. So bear with us as this is all women, but I think you'll still hear some good perspectives. And this panel is intended to be interactive, so there will be times where I will come to the audience, and if you have any questions for the panelists, or if you feel that you have something that you'd like to contribute, please feel free to raise your hand, and I want this to be as interactive and as engaging as possible, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and first set the stage. When we hear from James Meredith to millennials, who knows who James Meredith is? Let's start there. I want to make sure everybody knows who James Meredith is. He was the first African-American student to enroll at the University of Mississippi. He wasn't the first to apply. There were others who had applied before him, but he was the first to enroll. Does anybody know the year that James Meredith enrolled? Yes. 1962, yes. So September 30th, 1962, he was officially enrolled, and October 1st is when he attended his first class. At that time in our university's history, it was a tumultuous time. It wasn't an easy enrollment for him. There were riots, people lost their lives, the federal government had to intervene, and Mr. Meredith faced lots of discrimination and challenges throughout his time as a student at the University of Mississippi. But he persevered and did graduate from the university. He went on to do tremendous things, and he still lives in the state of Mississippi today. And he often comes back to campus. But that period in the university's history really set the stage and the tone in terms of thinking about race relations at the University of Mississippi. It continues to plague us today. Every time there is a racial incident, the media automatically goes back to 1962. And I feel like oftentimes in terms of doing diversity work, we have to prove that, it's not 1962 anymore. Progress has been made, but certainly there's still work to be done in terms of race relations. So today's panelists, I'm gonna just throw some questions at them to talk about their experiences as a student of color today in 2017. While we acknowledge that it's not 1962 anymore, and we have seen tremendous growth in terms of African-American student population and as well as other students of color and their enrollment as well, there might have been challenges that are unique to the African-American or student of color experience at the University of Mississippi. So I think this is an important and timely panel as a part of this It Starts With Meek campaign. So my first question to the panelists, before you came to Ole Miss, were you apprehensive about the racial issues that would be here? And if so, have your fears come true or been erased?
Yeah. I guess I'll start. So my senior year in high school was actually when the whole James Meredith statue incident happened. So that was possibly right after I was accepted into the university, which scared the living daylights out of me, wondering, when I come there, will that happen? As well as the election of President Obama, having people here who are on campus already talking about the riots, talking about how they fear for their lives that night. So yeah, definitely, I was definitely like scared. But I guess just coming here and putting myself in that situation the same way that he did kind of erased some of my fears, and just seeing the swift justice process that was happened after the incident kind of put my fears at ease.
I like to agree with her. Like when I came my freshman year, that's when the incident with the statue happened, and then later on, the people came to protest on campus. And I like how the situation was handled, but going in, I didn't really think much of it. But when I was actually here, I was like, whoa, this is real. Like, this is like real life. Like, what are we gonna do about it? So.
For me, prior to coming to the University of Mississippi, I wasn't necessarily apprehensive about it. I know a lot of my family was. A lot of my family did not want me to come just because of the university's history. So they were fearful of it. For me, it was a bigger version of my high school. Demographically, it looked a lot like my high school. When I came to visit, the people were a lot like the people at my high school. So I just figured it would be a bigger version of that. So I was cool with it. But when I got here, I don't know that I would say that the noose incident kind of triggered for me reality, but I definitely found triggers once I got here.
I'm from South Mississippi, and for the longest I thought I was going to the University of Southern Mississippi, and I knew nothing about the University of Mississippi, nothing about their traditions. I was so oblivious to this university that I thought it was like the University of Ole Miss, so that just kind of gives a perspective. But after I came to a summer program, it kind of, well, let me back up. I will say I was very apprehensive about the university. I thought it was just a bunch of rich kids, a bunch of people who were not open-minded to other people who were not like themselves. And so I was apprehensive, but I feel like for me the turning point was when I participated in a summer program while I was in high school. I came and actually got to see how the university was. And I was still in high school when the noose incident happened, and it was like all over the news, and my family was asking me like, do you still want to go there? I was like, yeah, I mean, that's the university I want to go to. They offer what I feel like I could excel in. And so I feel like overall, since my time being here, the initial, I guess, thought that I had about the university has been changed. There has been, a few incidents here and there, but overall, I do not regret my decision coming here.
Okay, good. I oftentimes hear students of color will say, I have to defend the decision to go to Ole Miss to my family. Personally, I want to be transparent here. I attended the other school in the state, colors are maroon and white. I won't say the name. But a lot of my reason for not choosing Ole Miss was very much similar to a lot of the stereotypes that you all mentioned. And so to me, I couldn't overcome that. So I'm really glad that you all are here and that you did. And I don't regret my undergraduate choice. I won't say that, but I do regret not at least giving the University of Mississippi a chance, at least because of those stereotypes that I had about the university. So now, when your friends or your family ask you about the environment at Ole Miss, how do you describe it?
Personally, I describe it as a family. So when you have a family, of course you have family members that you don't necessarily see eye to eye with, that you don't necessarily agree on the same issues with. But at the end of the day, you love them. You love that sense of community. And I feel like the university offers different outlets and different resources, such as the center, to make you feel more a part of that family. So that's how I describe it.
When people ask me about Ole Miss, I tell them it's a community that offers students an opportunity to be active on campus. My freshman year, I came right into the flag incident where there was, the huge debate on campus about whether or not the state flag should be flown on campus. And prior to, I had never really put much thought into it, but coming to campus and seeing student leaders take that charge, on either side, it was really eye-opening to me to see just how active and how much power and how much influence we as students have on campus. And so that's what I tell students or anybody who asks me about my university, that it's just an opportunity for students to get involved and immerse themselves in things you may not otherwise have access to. And I mean, I love my school, and so I express the love that I have for my university, but I also do say that it's an opportunity to get involved and get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Brittany on that and Nekkita about the whole sense of community. And people do take their like leadership roles very serious, and like people are very passionate about it. So yeah.
Tysianna, you want to add anything? Okay. All right, so this campaign, it starts with me. It's all about rejecting stereotypes. So how have you, if you have you been stereotyped because of your race or other aspects of your identity? And what would you like the audience to know about those stereotypes and how they impacted you?
I think, well, for me, like being a part of a predominantly white sorority, people will say like, oh, she's stuck up, or like she wants to be white, she's trying to be white. But I mean, that's false because I am proud of who I am, which is a Black and Filipino woman. So, yeah.
For me, a couple weeks ago, an incident happened in class. It was a small discussion class, and it's only like 12 students, and we're at a roundtable discussion in the class. Is about protest music in the South. And so, of course, when you're talking about protests in the South, you're going to be talking about race. And so there's only 3 Black students in the classroom, 3 Black women, and the professor is a Black male. And sometimes the conversations get very, I wouldn't say heated, but they get in depth. And so there was this one class discussion where we were specifically talking about race. And for me, that race and just how race operates across different lines really interests me. And so I was really into the conversation. I was really listening and looking for other students' perspectives. But you know, while I was just sitting there listening, looking intently, another student, a white male student, raised his hand as if he had something pertinent to say to the discussion, and he raised his hand and called me out and said, "Hey, Brittany looks mad. Let's hear what she has to say." And I took offense to that. I mean, I didn't like get out of context with him in the classroom or anything, but I was like, no, I'm not mad at all. I'm just sitting here listening to the discussion. So I'm mad because I'm a Black woman and we're talking about race. I mean, I didn't really understand. But a couple of weeks later, I brought that to his attention, and I just want people to know that because a Black woman is maybe passionate about something, that does not mean that she's mad or anything like that. It just means that I'm aware and I enjoy the topic, and I articulate myself. So yeah, that was just kind of really offensive for me personally.
Yeah, I would say that I face many of the same angry Black woman stereotypes, more so than any other. I've seen people face other stereotypes. I've seen people be like misjudged or mischaracterized because of how they look. I think that me being like a light-skinned Black woman does afford me some privilege to avoid different stereotypes that other people otherwise would be characterized with or labeled, but I definitely have encountered that angry Black woman narrative. I've been told to calm down, especially like in my major. So I'm the only Black girl that I'm aware of in my major at the moment. Not the only Black person. There are a few other Black guys, but there aren't that many Black people. So it's hard being not only the only Black person in the room generally, but also having, for the most part, having a different opinion about policy and things and other people, and being passionate about it, and that being associated with anger or that being associated with rage. So I think that those are stereotypes that I personally have faced, but I do know that like I've seen and other people encounter other, to me, more harsh stereotypes.
Thank you all for sharing those. So I want to come to the audience now. Are there questions or comments that any of you have at this point? Yes.
I'd like to just get a perspective from a Black man. I can
Certainly.
Other black men can agree with some things I deal with on this campus. When I dress up, I'm more respected. When I dress like this, I'm not as respected. That's probably the most I see every day. Also, always having to articulate myself in campus, like I can agree, like with what y'all were saying, having to go above and beyond all the time to ignore that stereotype of the black man, in the classroom or even at events. I always have to go above and beyond. I have to work harder than everybody else because there are always people thinking, oh, he's just another black guy, or oh, he's an athlete. I'm not an athlete. I'm a scholar. I'm here to do work. So I think there's a lot of stuff, misconceptions about people on campus, and just in general. This is everywhere. I can go anywhere and get, criminalized. Me walking down the street. I may be minding my own business, but because of my blackness, I have to, I have to cross the street for people because of the way I look, and that's it. When I have a suit on, I don't have to do that. But when I don't have a suit on, I have to do it. So,
Thank you. What's your name?
Jonathan Lovelace.
Johnny. Okay. Thank you, Jonathan. And thank all of you for definitely sharing those. Did anyone else want to share? So I think you said something that's really important, Jonathan, about I can't speak for all other black people on this, or black men, and I think that's important because one of the things that we all want to be careful about any point is not ever asking any person to speak on behalf of everyone, in their race, because my experience is different from all of their experiences, and Jonathan's experience is going to be different from every other black man or other person of color's experience on campus as well. So thank you for bringing that point out. And I also want to give you all some language or terminology to kind of categorize the things that you may have been experiencing. And for everyone in the audience, have you ever heard the term racial microaggressions or just microaggressions? Is anybody familiar with that term? Okay, so microaggressions are just those everyday insults or slights that people do. It's common things, often unintended. So oftentimes someone says something or does something and they have no idea that they're actually stereotyping you or have preconceived notions about who you are or the type of person that you might be. And so microaggressions, there are three different types. And so I've heard some of the examples used and some of the things. So the first one type is micro invalidations, and that means that essentially your feelings aren't valid. You may say, I was offended by this because of my race, or because I'm a person that's some part of this identity group, and then someone may say, oh, you're just overreacting, or you're just being too sensitive. So that's a micro invalidation. A micro insult would be just those things like crossing the street when you see a person of color coming, or clutching your purse because you see a person of color walking towards you, assuming that you're mad, the angry black woman stereotype. And then a micro assault is the more egregious thing. So it's the things like being called just flat out like the N-word. One of the things that I deal with in my position, I'm the chair of the bias incidents response team on campus. And so students who have experienced things like micro assaults especially, those reports come into me. And so one of the things that happened my very first year here, a student walked into class, and some of the students probably have heard this story before, walked into class. It was her first semester at the University of Mississippi. She's an African-American student from a little town near Starkville. She came to Ole Miss. She'd had a great welcome week experience. Walked into class and sat down next. This is a black woman. She sat down next to a white woman, and the white woman said, "I don't sit next to the N-word." That student gets up, walks away, and moves to another seat. And everyone that was around them, which were all also white students, everybody just laughed. No one intervened on her behalf. No one said, "Hey, that's not right." So that student, she ended up changing and went to another session of the class because she didn't want to ever go back to that class to face the student who'd said that to her. and she ended up leaving the university after that first semester. So I have several other stories that are like that that I've known about students experiencing. So I appreciate you all for sharing these stories. And so I share that to, just give you all just a reality that as a person of color at a predominantly white institution, these are daily experiences of being the only person that looks like you in your classroom, or or that being in the Grove, or what have you. And they're not all bad. I mean, obviously you've heard people share the positive and the love for the university as well. But I think this is also a reality that's important just to know about, and for others to just at least just acknowledge and recognize. Okay, so I wanted to just give you that language. So microaggressions, and they've broken down into those 3 parts. And so you don't have to really get down into those, but just to be aware and kind of understand what microaggressions are. I challenge you to go and research and look into those more. And any of us can be microaggressed too. So it's not something that's unique to people of color. There are microaggressions against women. So like the dumb blonde stereotype, right? So assuming just because I have blonde hair that I'm not smart. Microaggressions against people with disabilities. So assuming someone who's has a physical limitation or in a wheelchair might not be intellectually capable to make, decisions. So there are microaggressions against LGBT people, so there's lots of different types of microaggressions, so they're not unique to people of color. So any of us at any time can certainly experience them. So I probably went way off track there, but I felt like it was important to at least give you that language to use. Are there other questions? Yes. Okay. Thank you. And y'all want to respond to her comment?
No, I find my experience to be the same because, like I said, in my major, I'm also the minority. So I also despise group work because it is one of those situations where it doesn't, you don't want to be over dramatic about it. You don't want to necessarily say it because sometimes people aren't aware that they're doing it, which makes it even more frustrating. But I definitely understand. Yeah.
Other questions or comments from the audience? Yes.
Yes, I have a question. And this can go to anyone. Do you feel like because of our cultural experiences, because of how we were raised, or because of our prior knowledge of history, do you think that sometimes it's harder to sometimes we feel like we have to over-explain ourselves on why we feel the way that we feel, like here at the university, when it comes to just certain issues such as either race-related, whether it's race-related or just culturally in general?
For me, yeah, I feel like I do have to kind of go a little too in depth sometimes when I feel a certain way. That oftentimes I just try not to, if we're talking about politics or something, or anything that's very controversial, I try to just keep my opinions to myself, because anytime I talk about something and it may not be the popular opinion, I'm seen as mad, or It's just like all Black people think that way, and that's not the case. And so I do find that I have to explain myself a little bit more just to verify or justify that I'm not mad and that I do have a pretty good understanding of the issue. And so, I mean, yeah, that's most basically just so people can know I'm not just mad about it. Like, I've seen it, I've experienced it, I've witnessed it. So.
For me, I guess it may be like my inner social worker wants everybody to be on the same page or to be happy with a decision. So I was raised to be proud of my Blackness. In my house, we celebrate our history, we celebrate our Blackness. And so I found myself surrounding myself with a lot of people of different colors, of different races. And when it's Black History Month and when it's time for me to talk about an issue that I'm passionate about, that pride comes in. I'm super excited to share what I know, how I feel, my family's history, or how it makes me feel. And then I don't get the same, I don't get that same response from them. And they're kind of like, not understanding where my pride, where my joy comes from. And so I just use that as a teachable moment, whether it's in the classroom or on the square at my house, anything like that. I just use it as a teachable moment. And I want to understand maybe what they don't understand. So I'll ask questions. What are you not understanding? Why does this not excite you? Things like that. And also, so we went to the African American Museum. I was so happy to come home to show not my Black friends, but my white friends, all these pictures. I was in there, snapping it up, showing them the slave cabins, things like that, because I want them to understand. So use everything as a teachable moment rather than getting angry, rather than getting discouraged, rather than holding your opinion back. Just stop, take a step back, and just explain it to them. And if they don't get it from there, at least you walk away knowing that you did the best that you could, and agree to disagree.
I think Nekkita brings up a good point in terms of the teachable moments. And I think, one of the things about conversations about race especially is that there's the fear of like saying the wrong thing or offending someone. And so I want to, really encourage everyone in this room. I think this is important that don't let fear, prevent you from asking questions. I think if you're coming from a authentic, genuine place, no one's going to be upset with you for asking questions about their identity. So, I think there are ways in which you want to approach it, and the personal relationships certainly help. But ask questions, like take those opportunities to learn from one another. Don't be offended. And there's something that all of us can learn, like, even as people of color, you can learn from other people of color. You can learn from white people, or, people who have different identities than your own. And so I do want to encourage you. I think that was a really good point, Nekkita, like taking advantage of those opportunities. Don't be afraid to say the wrong thing. And there's something that when I talk about diversity work, I always just think about giving people a little bit of grace. People are going to make mistakes. People are going to say the wrong things. I've been doing this work for a long time, and I don't always get it right either. So just keep that in mind. I think that's an important lesson that we can all remember, just to give people grace. Like, intentions matter. Impact is important. Like, there's, you can be well-intended. The impact is ultimately what matters, but at the same time, I always just keep in mind, like, I kind of question myself, like, I know this person was well-intentioned, so to me, I'm not going to just write them off as racist or sexist or homophobic or what have you. Like, I want to give them an opportunity to explain and to learn from me, and to ask questions. Because if you don't, it gets draining sometimes. I know I've heard people of color talk like, I'm tired of teaching and I'm tired of explaining the same thing. It does get draining sometimes, but if you don't take that time, then how would other folks ever know? Or if you are not, if you are in a majority group, then if you don't take the time to ask the questions, how are you gonna ever really kind of truly understand? So anybody else have anything?
I wanted to add to that. So I'm also very big on, definitely if I know something, I'd love to share it. But I am big on accountability as well. So if someone asks me a question about being a woman or being a Black woman, I expect them to have done something on their end too. So I am for explaining myself. I am for explaining to you my experiences and things like that. Once I've seen you've also done the work, because it's never the job of the oppressed to educate the oppressors. So if if explaining myself does in some way help you understand my experience, that's wonderful. But I also want to know that you've done something on your part to read a blog, you can Google anything, just that you've done some research to try to understand my experience before you come asking me questions, because I'm a person, I have a life. I'm not an encyclopedia. I'm not a wealth of information, so
And
it
you
is
can't speak on
important.
behalf of all
Right,
people.
and I'm not the spokesperson for black girls. Like, that's not what I am. I can give you my perspective, I can give you my opinion, but you have to do some work on your part first, and I have to know that you've done some work on your part, because it's not my job to teach you, and that's not you, that's anybody. And then I'm willing to sit and have that. I'm always willing to sit and have that conversation, but I've got to feel like I'm not wasting my time, because I hate wasted time. And if I'm just telling you this to preach to the choir, to try to reaffirm something, or it's not my job to change your mind. So if you're really willing to work and to try to understand and to try to get a grasp of it, sure, let's talk, let's figure this out. But it's gotta be work on both ends. Like, I don't want to get in the habit of like expecting people to always explain their oppression, because they shouldn't have to.
Other questions or comments from the audience? Yes, Kevin.
I'm actually going to ask for advice. So, as an instructor, especially a white male instructor, I often want to encourage my students of color to actively engage in class discussion and that. But at the same time, I don't want them to feel like I'm picking on them, or to ask them to kind of speak for their identity as a whole. So, what advice could you give to kind of help me with that, or also kind of help class discussion, and like, you know, she said to make sure their opinions are heard and valued by the other students in the class?
I find it easier to engage when my teachers start the class by saying, like, this is a safe space. You can share your opinion. You can be who you want to be. And something that I picked up from Jennifer Stolman in the William Winter Institute, and I find this very helpful in making me more comfortable in sharing in class, is that you ask people to speak from the I position. So I feel, I believe, and that makes it a whole lot easier, because then I'm not speaking on behalf of black people, I'm just speaking on behalf of my experience. So I think that, like, setting the tone for a safe space and then like living that in your class, and then, because it is kind of awkward to be like, oh yeah, what's a black feeling like, and the people don't want to try to give that answer. So I think that the environment that you create is more important than anything. So if you're creating an environment in which people feel safe and able to vocalize, then I think that they will.
Anyone else have anything to add?
I think Ty said it all. I mean, in my major personally, it is more black people than white people. So, like, I don't have that experience where I'm the only black person. It's in the class where it's 30, it's probably 21 black people, 9 white people. So, my teachers who are white women, Asian women, they do a great job of setting that safe space up for us to talk, and for even so that the white students will feel comfortable talking to. So, we also do that feel thing in all of our class discussions. So I've seen it in action. It definitely does work as well.
Other questions or comments from the audience at this point? Okay, I do have another question for the panelists. Can you give us an example of either or both a joy and a challenge of being a person of color at the University of Mississippi?
Well, freshman year, I went through recruitment and I got into a sorority where I was the first black female at the sorority here on campus. But before that, there was that challenge of me saying, should I do recruitment? Like all these like white girls, I'm not gonna get in because I am black. And then I had to think, well, I thought about Kim Dandridge. Like, I wondered, is that how she felt when she went through? And I was very hesitant about, did I like want to do that process? But going in, I made plenty of friends, and I'm happy I made that decision. So it's like both a joy and a challenge in itself.
Well, for me, a joy was coming here and seeing all the resources available, all the conversations that are had, all the student organizations that I could join. So those are always safe spaces for me. My happiest times is to go to like a BSU meeting or to just go down to the center and have a tough conversation are always my happiest times. Definitely a challenge would be to get other people to come here, because you can like tell them how happy you are all day. They can see all your pictures on Instagram, but they won't come. They won't understand until they come here. And so just getting them to make that first step to like apply and to get here is definitely like a challenge for me, because I want them to have that same great experience that I've had.
I found happiness. So I know like it's kind of been a current trend among everyone that like this is like a family. I haven't had that much of a familial experience here. I expected to, but it hasn't really been that for me. But I find joy, like my joyful moments are in moments, well, honestly, like in my smaller community. So in my, like with my sisters or with people in the NAACP, in these safe spaces where I know that I can be myself unapologetically, I can be loud and funny and wild, and that's okay, and that I could also be serious, and I can also have important conversations and they understand where I'm coming from. And then I would say that the most challenging thing is navigating outside of those spaces. So when I'm not with those people, navigating in this university and not feeling like an outsider everywhere I go, which literally can mean walking down the street, not feeling like an outsider walking down the street. So it's really challenging to exist and navigate through the university for me, especially because of like just the type of things that I've been attached to. So my joyous moments are in those safe spaces that I've created with people that I love and that I care about, and then my tough moments are like literally anywhere outside of that.
I would definitely have to agree with you, Ty, on that. Just because, like, you know, when you're in your safe spaces, you're safe. You feel you can be yourself 100%. So that's like when I'm in my room with my friends or with peers in a student organization that I really enjoy or identify with. But sometimes when I'm in a classroom and I'm the only student of color and the only female student of color, sometimes I feel like I have to suppress or downplay parts of who I am and parts of my identity and parts of how I express myself, just so people don't think less of who I am or what I'm capable of or the positions that I may hold or what I've done just because of how I express myself. Just like, it's very subtle things, but it's something that I've come to be aware of in my 2 years here. And so sometimes I feel like I'm not able to 100% be myself when I'm around other people because, I mean, you just don't want people to be judgmental or stereotype you. And so that's something that I'm navigating as well. It's just, you know, how to work with that.
And a lot of you mentioned, I think 3 of you mentioned safe space. Safe space is a term that has been a lot in the news recently, and you know, I think it is a lot of misconception about what a safe space means in terms of, especially at a college campus. Safe space, I think in the terms in which they have defined it, it doesn't mean that we can't talk about a difference of opinion, that there can't be conservative versus liberal opinions, or that people can't freely express how they feel. That is not at all, in my perspective, what a safe space would mean. In a classroom, I think differences of opinion should be encouraged, and that anyone in that class should be able to share kind of how they feel. But if you hear what they're saying, a safe space is the sororities, it's your residence hall community, it's the student organizations that you're part of. It's those places where, as an underrepresented member of this community, that you can go, that you find a place where you can be free to be who you are, to express yourself, that you're going to be supported 100%. Because outside of those spaces in the classroom, when you are the only person that looks like you, that would not be considered to be a safe space for that person. So I felt like that was important, just to, just to bring that up and make sure it's something for you all to think about. I think we've heard a lot about safe spaces and, people being fragile and needing their safe spaces, but that's not at all, what a safe space means, especially in this context for a person of color or any other underrepresented student on this campus. It's just a place, any place, a physical place, or even, kind of a figurative place where people could go just to feel supported in a community where there's not a lot of other folks who might share those same identities as their own. I do have one last question, but I want to go to the audience if there are other questions from the audience or comments. Yes, Jonathan.
I'm a transfer student. I grew up with diverse people all my life, so like coming through was a big transition for me. I would say that the challenge would be, like I said earlier, fighting those stereotypes and dealing with the microaggressions all day long, and also being able to transcend between, like you talk about safe spaces, but also becoming white spaces. I've been knew how to do that coming in, but that still always will be a challenge forever for that. But I believe the joy I get from it is seeing people's like body reactions and movement, like me asking questions in class or having a debate in class. Like seeing people's reactions give me joy, knowing that hey, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and even though you hate me or dislike me, I'm still gonna do what I gotta do to get out of here. Well, graduate, and I feel like even on campus and different events and things, just doing what I do, being myself, is dangerous in itself here because there's a lot of homogenous stuff going on and people in justice thing and all of that. But like I defy all of that all the time, and based on other people's reactions, I feel joy in myself. And like Nekkita was saying, uplifted herself based because I know my history. I know I have a lot of pride, and people don't understand that, and that's what drives me on a daily basis. So I would say that's the joy.
Thank you. Other comments? Yes.
Just in the short time y'all have been here at the University of Mississippi since 2013, 2014, whatever, have you seen I guess an improvement or kind of a standstill or decline as far as race relations since you've been here after like events sort of like this? Like, do you think it's working? Having conversations like this.
I think the conversations are important, but it would be even more impactful, and the importance would be even more magnified if this entire auditorium was full. And I know that the Meek School of Journalism and the Planning Committee and the students have put in a lot of work to organize this. It's been really well put together. And I think this is an awesome week. But if more students were interested and were willing to learn, they would come to events like this. And so
it's hard to say.
I mean, to answer your question, I wouldn't say it's declining, but I guess to be honest, I guess it would be kind of like at a standstill, maybe going forward a little bit, but always kind of going back to that standstill. Because ideally, if we were, making an impact, this room would be full. And, but it's not. And that's not to discourage what's happening right now. The people that are in this room are, I hope, taking something away from it. And so just continue to do things like this. Ms. Shawnboda at the center, continue to, push initiatives, push programming. Because, that's the only thing that's going to move this university forward. So.
Yeah, I would be more open to saying that things are getting better if I saw more people engaging as well. I see the same people at many of these types of programs. I see the same people engaging. I see the same people learning and growing. So yes, people are growing, but it's the same people that are growing. And it's not necessarily the people that need to be growing. We all need to, but there are people in positions of power. There are people in these fraternities and sororities that have some sort of student capital that also need to be here, that also need to be present and need to be learning these things, hearing these things, growing as a community. But I don't think that I can't argue that I've seen growth as a whole community. If anything, to me, it looks like the tension is getting worse.
Yeah, I think certainly individuals probably who come to things like this are impacted positively, but it's really difficult to measure the entire campus climate just because this is like not even 1% of the student body right here, right? And so, so it is difficult. I do think that the university has put infrastructure in place. So there's resources more now than ever before at the university. So the resources are there. Now, how do we get students to really engage in those and have authentic conversations about difference? You know, a lot of times people think, oh, we should let's just stop talking about race and it'll go away. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. We have to, especially at this university, continue to have these difficult conversations. I know they're not always comfortable, but this is really going to be the only way I think the university is going to move past. And the challenge that we also have as an institution, going back to the integration of the university in 1962, I mean, you're talking about images of riots and death that went out all over the country. So that's the perspective that so many people have of the University of Mississippi. And so then other things continue to happen. So the noose around the James Meredith statue, social media posts that go viral that comes out of this community. So all of those things, in my opinion, set us back. Like we take one step forward and then we go 2 steps back. Here they go again. The Ole Miss is being racist again. All of their students are racist. You know, and so I think those are the challenges that are unique because these things do happen on other campuses. I worked in other places and stuff like this happens. I mean, there's, you know, issues of race all over the country, but it's magnified, I think, to a greater level here. And that doesn't, I'm not saying that it's not justified, that we do have that microscope on us, but certainly it's magnified here. So we have to work, I think, twice as hard as an institution to move forward and move past some of the racial tensions that we have had, unlike other universities who don't get the, you know, time something happens, CNN, now it's going to be on their campus, but CNN would come here, you know, in the blink of an eye. And so it always goes back to 1962 and the enrollment of James Meredith. And so we have to just continue, I think, to work. You stole my thunder, actually, a little bit, because that was my final question to the panel, but that's okay. So I did want to, you know, I wanted to ask, do you all agree that progress had been made since the enrollment of James Meredith, but then also, you know, where do we go from here? What additional steps does the university need to make to foster a more inclusive campus environment for students of color? And the audience, you can respond to this as well. So I'll let you start first, and then we'll open it back up to an audience discussion about that last question.
I mean, I definitely think progress has been made. I love all the resources that the school is like offering to these certain groups, and I love being a part of. It starts with me committee and being a part of this panel, and I just hope it just doesn't stop in the journalism department, but also become an event campus-wide. So hopefully we can look forward to that. So
I definitely think the university is making progress. Since I've been here, the center was started, and we've got this new vice chancellor. I really do see them putting their money where their mouth is. I think that the most important thing moving forward that the university has to do, and I think that this has hindered a lot of growth, is that in moments of like conflict or moments where like the tension is there and there's a decision to be made, I think that our leaders at the university have to get into the habit of I know that keeping the peace is an important part of like campus climate and things, but I also think that doing the right thing is sometimes more important than keeping the peace. So, and then there are some instances where I think you can do both. But I think that in those moments, I think our leaders here at the university have got to start leaning a little more, sometimes at least, to doing what's right, even if it's hard, even if it means a little controversy, even if it means a little hysteria, for the sake of doing what's right. And this keeping, the peace is going to come, the peace is going to settle, things are going to settle, people get in their emotions and things like that, and that's fine. I think that's a part of humanity. But I think that in moments of conflict, where it's the decision, maybe a decision or something is hard, they're faced with something hard, I think that standing on the side of what you know to be right or what you know to be better for people, even if it means a little conflict up front, I think that they've got to learn to hit that head on, if progress will continue to be made.
We have to look at it as a people problem or issue and not a PR.
Yeah, yes, yes.
I think most fundamentally, the university and different departments and schools on campus need to continue to push and program initiatives like this and weeks like this, because I mean this is the only way we're going to get the dialogue started. And encourage your friends to come. Don't just come to something because it's extra credit. Like, come to something because you actually want to take something away from it. I mean, we're only here for like 4 to 6 years on average. After you graduate, nobody in the real world is going to say, hey, come to this panel about race or different aspects of people's identity. Like, in the real world, you're expected to know how to navigate across those lines. So take advantage of what the university has to offer. I mean, this is a beautiful room. The School of Journalism has awesome resources, and so do other schools on campus. I mean, take advantage of what you're paying for. Come to different panels, go meet different people, and you see a sign on a bulletin board and it looks interesting. If you have time, go to it, because that's the only way you're going to broaden your horizons. Don't go to something just because you're going to get 5 points on a paper. Go to something because you actually want to learn, and bring a friend with you, bring your roommate. Take advantage of what the university is offering, because they are putting their money where their mouth is. And professors and faculty on campus are working really hard. But I think we as students, we have to pull our weight, and we have to start taking advantage of what's here.
Yes, I'll come up here first.
I'm not a religious from the South, and so you guys talked a lot today about, you know, one of you mentioned they don't even know they're doing it. And so I think I was so blinded to the fact of, you know, I had never experienced like anything like racial and everything, you know, and that's like this kind of culture. And when I came to the South, I saw such a huge difference. And, you know, someone mentioned like, they said like the N-word, and like I had never even heard that in my life. Like, and even today, like I came into class and I just thought like I love learning about this kind of stuff. You know, it is good to talk about it, and I feel like a lot of people just roll their eyes sometimes at the fact, because they're like, oh, here we go again talking about diversity. But it is an important issue, so I thank like the panel for doing this today, and I respect like the Meek department, because I even asked my professor if our class could come today.
Thank you.
I just came into class and I was like, I think this is important. You know, I think this is something that people need to hear and something that people need to experience. And like you said, broaden the horizon.
Definitely.
Because then you become, you know, you only know what you experience. And so for us to be more cultured, for us to be more diverse instead of divided, we do need to have these experiences and these challenges.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Zacchaeus?
As being a student, IMC student here at the Mead School of Journalism and New Media, I think it's so very, very important to have these conversations and this dialogue as aspiring journalists and aspiring marketing communicators, because, you know, this is our, like, we uphold the First Amendment, and I think that it's important. We tell the truth. You know, like, it's our job to tell the truth, to hold the truth, and to be more transparent, and to hold other people accountable, like Tysianna said. And I think that this university would go very, very far once we, you know, stop correlating like our political parties and affiliations with race relations.
Yeah.
Like it aggravates me, you know, when we associate, you know, race relations with being liberal. Like it's a liberal agenda. It's not a liberal agenda. It's not a conservative agenda. It's a human dignity agenda.
Exactly.
To experience and to learn, to grow. And I think that's very, very important, to be like Brittany Brown said, like in the real world, you're not gonna get, you're not gonna get this often unless you go into like higher education or you go into fields that are in the world academia, like universities and colleges and stuff like that. So please keep that in mind, especially when you discuss and have dialogues with people on social media, especially. Like this is not a liberal agenda, this is a human dignity agenda. So.
Thank you. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's hard. It's like that's a whole nother safe space that's boxed in.
That's a whole other session. But
yeah.
But go ahead. Go ahead.
But no, definitely the MPAC. I think the MPAC is the underdog that's like always slept on. And we do so much work. We do so many things. Like not even just my sorority, but like our MPAC really does work. And so it's hard being a black student on this campus and seeing that work because I'm in the community and knowing that we do work and knowing that we do important work, and seeing people not come, like people don't participate. We all, like I've seen us hold panels kind of similar to this, do things, try to have these important discussions, and I think it's really big. We've been like, and we're always working to bridge the gap between like IFC and PC. But we never received like that from the other side. So for me, it's been really difficult and really frustrating being a member of the NPHC and like trying to exist and navigate through this community and knowing that we have the brain power, we have the willingness, the drive to do this important work, and that it often gets minimized or it often gets swept under the rug because we're such a small council, or we don't get taken seriously enough to do a partnership with a big NPC sorority or a big IFC fraternity. So for me, like that's, I think I'm answering your question. Am I kind of answering your question? It's difficult for me, and it's frustrating for me to see that we do a lot of work, that we are always putting ourselves out there and to not get that in return. So it's kind of echoing this thing that we've talked about already, in that participation is important. If you know something is going on, if you know an event is being held, if a very small organization reaches out to you and you're in an organization of 500 people, like really try to engage, really try to bridge that gap, because we're trying, but I mean, we're small. We're very small in comparison. But our work is just as important, and we're just as willing to work. We don't have thousands and thousands of dollars, but we have a lot of heart, and we really try. So I think that from my perspective as a member of the NPAC, there's definitely more work to be done, but I think that community support is very important, and I would argue that we don't get as much as we should. Definitely not. We don't just dance and stroll. That's a very small part of it.
Yeah, I think that's such a, NPHC organizations were founded in the early 1900s for social change and were really advocates and advocacy work. So certainly dancing and the strolling and the partying, you know, just like all social.
That's how we de-stress, to be honest, from all
yeah,
the work.
I mean, NPHC organizations are businesses, they are corporations, and there are national associations, just like in NPC and IFC. But yeah, I think on this campus especially, there are a lot of misconceptions about NPHC, sororities, and fraternities. They are small, but they certainly are mighty and do a lot of great work. So yeah, so thank you for that question. Yeah.
And everybody wants to come to Union Unplugged, but nobody wants to come to the events.
Yeah, I think there's certainly, who's a member of NPAC, IFC, or NPC, sororities or fraternities? Okay. So it's going to have to start with you all. Like, you're going to have to start to have those personal connections and authentic conversations within yourselves first. I think it starts there. And I think those interactions have to be beyond the strolling, like, let me teach you how to step or stroll, because if that's the only interaction you're having, then that is feeding into some of those misconceptions. So like I said, this could have been a whole other session. So, but I do think that there's opportunity. I've seen on other campuses where there are more genuine, good working relationships between all of the councils, which with those communities being so large and so influential, I do think that is where a lot of the work in terms of bridging and strengthening racial relationships on campuses, it can start in those organizations. And I think it starts with the personal communication, the personal connections. So I don't think there's a panel this week about MPAC or fraternity and sorority life, but maybe I do think this is an important conversation. So hopefully we can maybe work together and host something like that in the future, because I do think it's something I hear often on campus for sure. Okay, are there other questions or comments? I think we have a few more minutes before we wrap up. Okay. So I do want to, we'll just close. I think we'd kind of challenge all of you to think about, with that last question I asked about how does the university work to be a more inclusive campus, but I also want you to each ask yourselves that same question: what can I do? So the theme is, it starts with Meek, or it starts with me and Meek. And so with it starting with you, what can you do? What are the things that you have? What's in your sphere of influence? How can you make a difference for someone else? Or, that's one of the, kind of, when you hear the term privilege, oftentimes privilege is seen as like, oh, it's this bad thing. But privilege isn't a bad thing. It's how you use your own privilege. So, and all of us have some aspect of privilege. So even though you may have some marginalized identities, then you also have some privileged identities. If you're able-bodied, that means you have a privilege of being able-bodied. If you're a man, if you are white, if you are educated, you are in college. So this is a privilege that you have that students or folks from your hometowns who don't go to college or didn't get to go to college won't have. And so there are lots of ways to think about privilege. If you're heterosexual, if you're Christian, like, these are all identities that are considered to be, in at least within the U.S. Societal context, to be privileged identities. So think about those identities that you possess and how you can use your privilege to speak up when someone when you hear someone saying something that's offensive or exclusive, or to act on behalf of someone else, or but just think about what things you can do on this campus in your everyday life. What are the things that you're saying that you need to stop saying? What are the things that you're doing that's problematic that you need to stop doing? And I think that's something that all of us can ask ourselves. And so the first step is acknowledging that there is a problem and then working to try to overcome that problem. So please join me in thanking all of our panelists again. I really appreciate you all being willing to share your experiences. I really appreciate the audience for actively listening and also participating. So I think this has to continue. I think you asked a great question. It doesn't stop here. There are more great sessions and workshops throughout this week as a part of this campaign. And if you're not graduating and you're coming back to the university next year, please take advantage of all that the university has to offer in terms of other conversations and events and activities that really help you learn more about your own identity, but also that of others as well. So thank you all, and have a great rest of the day.